I did a 90-day urine therapy experiment, and the results are fascinating. Before I started this experiment, I did extensive blood testing and urine testing for heavy metals, toxicities, as well as doing full health and metabolic blood panels. At the end of 90 days, I did the same tests, and in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly what happened to my blood and my urine after 90 days of urine therapy. So what is urine therapy? Well, urine therapy goes back thousands of years from the Vedas in ancient India called Shivambu. Shivambu has been used for thousands of years specifically for treating all kinds of physical ailments. In the Vedas, in the scriptures, it talks about drinking one's own morning urine before the meditation practice, which enhances spiritual function and has also been used to support the healing of physical ailments. Well, fast forward to our modern time, and modern scientists are starting to understand the healing potential that's within our own urine. In urine, you can find stem cells that are mesenchymal in nature, meaning that they can help regenerate different tissues within the body. You can find amino acids that your body needs to regenerate all kinds of tissues. You can find enzymes that are essential to vital health. You can find hormones and peptides that are used for regeneration and tissue growth. And you can find many different mineral salts that are essential for cellular function in the body. Urine is actually about 97% water, the rest mineral salts and nutrients. And yes, it is true, in our urine you can find toxins and heavy metals. Certainly you can test for the metabolites of these things in the urine. But what most people don't know is that urine is not the main place for toxins to leave the body. Most of our toxins, including the ones that are detrimental to our health, including parasites, bacteria, toxins, heavy metals, actually leave through our feces and not our urine. Our urine is considered ultraplasma filtrate, meaning it is our blood filtered through our kidneys that produces our urine. So urine is significantly different than our feces, where the feces is filled with a lot more toxins and things that we absolutely would never want to put back in our body. Urine has eliminated most of these things and is mostly water and minerals and different kinds of nutrients. So the idea that urine could be medicine for your own body is not that far off when you look at the baby in utero in the mother's stomach. According to scientists, every single human being starts drinking and breathing in their own urine at about 10 weeks old. The amniotic fluid that each of us lived in inside of our mother's womb was primarily our own urine. And that urine is deemed responsible for the generation of our own organs, including our lungs. Because at 10 weeks old, we start ingesting and breathing in and drinking our own urine many times a day, from about 10 weeks old all the way until birth. It's very rare for a baby to poop in the womb. The baby's first poop, if you remember, once they're born, is called meconium, and it's a very thick, dark, sticky, textured feces, and it's very rare that that happens inside the womb, even though it does in very rare cases. But during majority of the baby's growth in utero, we are drinking our own urine many, many times a day, but not pooping in the womb. Now, why would we be designed to drink our urine in the womb? The only thing that makes sense to me, and what our modern science may be figuring out, is that our urine is a regenerative medicine for our bodies. It has the amino acids, it has the stem cells, it has the peptides and hormones, it has the minerals and salts, and it is majority water. And someone might think, well, the baby in utero is prevented from absorbing toxins into their body, so their urine would be safe for them, but that's not true. We know through the EWG study that the toxins that the mother takes in, whether it's heavy metals, chemical pollutants, carcinogens, endocrine disruptors, that those do pass through the umbilical cord and they do go into the placenta and they do affect the baby. So that does not protect the baby from the toxins that we're exposed to. In fact, the toxins that the mother has going inside her body are directly being passed into the baby. And most babies are not born with cancer and these diseases that these toxins can create. In fact, the cancers don't show up until years into childhood for most babies. So if those endocrine disrupting and carcinogenic toxins that the baby was drinking in every single day through their own urine was causing cancer, then you would think that these babies would all be born with cancer today. But like I said, they're not. And why are they not? That's an interesting question I think scientists still need to answer. There's an interesting book called The Water of Life by John W. Armstrong. And in this book, he shares dozens of case studies of patients who had everything from cancer to black water fever to malaria to heart disease and you name it, where he fasted them on their own urine for anywhere from 10 days up to 40 days, and they would drink all of their own urine throughout the day, and they would drink as much water as they wanted to. And he documented all these case studies of all of these ailments reversing. Now, this book's from the early 1900s. There's no hard scientific evidence backing this up, but this is a very interesting book if you want to read some case studies that he shares were healed with urine therapy. There's another book called The Golden Fountain by Cohn Vanderkroon, who shares a lot of different aspects and historical uses of urine therapy, from fasting and using it in the eyes to healing all kinds of ear issues, to in India using not only urine therapy from one's own urine for thousands of years, but the practice of using cow's urine to heal ailments. And so the first time I heard about this, I was living in San Diego and I was working with this nonprofit. And this was probably somewhere around 2007. And the person I was working with had been to India multiple times. And he told me one of the times he went there, he got really, really sick, stomach ache, vomiting, violently ill. And he went into the nearest kind of pharmacy type of place he could find, asking for help. He was so sick he couldn't hold anything down. And the quote-unquote pharmacist sent him out to buy a jug of green liquid on the side of the road from a man that was standing out there. And this guy didn't really know what he was sent to go buy, but he said, okay, this is supposed to help me. So he went and bought it. He said, drink all of that over the next 24 hours. And so he drank all of it and realized it was urine, ended up being cow's urine. And guess what? Within 24 hours, his ailment was gone. Again, that's a case study. There's no hard evidence or science to prove that, but I find it very fascinating that actually I heard of this therapy almost 20 years ago from somebody who used it using cow's urine that healed him of the ailment that he was experiencing. And he's one of thousands of people who have shared these kinds of case studies from urine therapy. And there's another book called Your Own Perfect Medicine, which actually goes into more of the science behind what's in urine, the published science we have, and talks about urea, for example, the urea that's in urine and how that's been used and how it's been used in many skincare products today. Talks about published science of urine. It talks about different case studies of people healing jaundice and different kinds of ailments and issues with urine therapy. So when I was introduced to urine therapy, I thought it sounded insane. I had never really knew anything about it, and I just kind of avoided it until my friend Jonathan Otto told me he'd been doing urine therapy for 2 years and had seen extraordinary results with people he was sharing it with. And then I heard from somebody personally that I know directly who used urine therapy in his eyes. He was losing his vision. He needed glasses to be able to read and see things. And he thought, well, let me try urine in my eyes. So he would take his urine every morning, he would put it in his eyes, and then in 2 months, he said he got 100% of his vision back.
Your eyes really quick. You were just saying your eyesight's been bad.
So my eyesight for the last 2 years have been fading very quickly. Wow. And I'll just kind of aggressively splash it on my face to make sure I get it in my eyes. So I haven't using a dropper or anything like that. And now the text that I can read is much better. Normally, in our evenings, looking at the menus, it's extremely dark, and it's usually would require a light or taking a picture and zooming in on it, and not anymore.
And now your eyesight literally has gotten better, where you can read words that you weren't able to read before.
2 months. Yeah, I could read words before I used to have to. My arms weren't long enough before, right?
Really?
They were like.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you went from needing glasses to not needing glasses.
And I was too proud, too big of an ego to use glasses, so it would just be a struggle.
Wow.
Right?
Again, if I'm theorizing why that could work, it makes sense with the peptides, the hormones, the amino acids, and the stem cells that could have been responsible for regenerating his eyesight. So as a natural health researcher and somebody who has spent years researching and personally experimenting with many different health protocols, from juice fasting for 3 weeks at a time to a 100% raw vegan diet for an entire year, to parasite cleanses, detoxes, heavy metal cleanses, entire diet and lifestyle shifts, deep spiritual practices, meditating for up to 8 hours a day. When I learn of health protocols, I don't only research them and read the published review literature on them and interview the experts and talk to the doctors, but then I go in and experiment with it myself to see what happens. So, of course, I had to say yes to trying urine therapy, and I gave it a full 90-day experiment where I took an entire glass of my first morning urine, and I would drink that entire glass each day, not missing a single day for 90 days. And here's what I found. Number one, I never felt sick during that time. Even though the first 10 days or so of drinking my own urine was a little weird, tasted strange, my subconscious telling me urine's not good for you, you shouldn't be drinking this, because that's how we're all pretty much raised and brought up. Overcoming that at about 9 or 10 days in, then I got really used to drinking the urine each morning. It wasn't so strange. It didn't taste so bad any longer. I wouldn't say it tasted good either, but it kind of tasted like a stale green tea as the closest thing I could say that it tasted like. The only time I did find that it actually tasted good, so I went to Kenya after I was done with the experiment. I was working with the tribes and helping to bring famine relief to many people starving there, and we were actually teaching parts of urine therapy, and we were showing the science and how to use urine as natural pesticides and natural fertilizers, which has been studied and well documented, using human urine to actually grow crops sustainably with your urine as a fertilizer and a pesticide. And these people were literally starving to death without food and no access to clean water. And so if somebody is dying, and you have access to urine that could keep you alive, it could literally save somebody's life. And so I was out in the desert, 100-degree heat. It was so hot. We were sweating like crazy, no water anywhere. And I decided to pee in a bottle and drink it. Well, guess what happened? I went from feeling dehydrated to having tons of energy and feeling actually invigorated. And for the first time, my urine tasted incredibly sweet. And I don't know what was the cause of that. I don't know if because I was eating a lot of fruit the previous days. And I don't know what the cause of that was, but it was very fascinating. Every sip I would take, I would have this sweet flavor last in my mouth for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And I was like, this is really weird. So I would sip again. Same thing, after flavor was sweet, and it would last for minutes at a time until I finished the entire amount. And not only did it solve my dehydration, clearly I was getting the minerals back in my body, water back in my body, and I felt so much better, not dehydrated anymore, but I literally was having this sweet flavor with every single drink, and it would last for minutes at a time. So the big thing is, what happened to me and my blood work and my urine results after this experiment? Well, let's go into it right now. So we'll look at my blood test from January 31st, and then my next follow-up was May 2nd. And so what you'll see here is vitamin B12 and folate, there wasn't much difference. Inflammation, there wasn't much difference at all. HSCRP, white blood cells, neutrophils, basophils. So if we're looking at all kinds of lymphocytes and monocytes and neutrophils, there was not much difference at all. Some were up, some were down. There's nothing really to point out here that I can see other than eosinophils went from 7 to 8.7. But if you look at my previous test before that, it was 5.9 and it was 3.8. So they've been slowly increasing, which could indicate some kind of parasite. And actually, after I've gotten back from Kenya, I've started doing some parasite cleanses. So this is very interesting, but you can see that it's been on the increase over the last couple of years. And then if we look at my monocyte percentage, we can see that's been on the decrease the last couple of years. It started at 14, went to 15, and then it went down to 11, 10, so that's kind of on its way down. And then if we look at heart health markers, there's not really much difference here. The numbers are within 10 or less points on most of these, up or down, so there's nothing really here to point out. If we look at hormones, we look at testosterone, free testosterone, and SHBG. My SHBG, which has been high for a while, and I'm working on that, actually stayed exactly the same. My free testosterone went up 0.1, and my total testosterone went up about 10 points. So again, nothing major here. If we're looking at minerals, no major difference other than vitamin D was increased. If we look at metabolism, my glucose was lower at first, and then it was in a normal range. That's not really anything. Glucose measurement can fluctuate like this. My A1C was exactly the same, 5.1. My ALT was almost the same. My insulin was slightly higher into a slightly healthier range. My insulin was in a very healthy range of 4.8. whereas before it was 3.5, it was slightly low. But again, as we go through all these numbers, there's really nothing here to point out to show a significant difference. Either, hey, this increased all my biomarkers and made it so amazing, or, you know what, it decreased them. It's so dangerous. It was so bad for me, right? There's really nothing here that can point out. And here's something interesting. My platelets actually have been low for a while now, which I discovered, and so now we're working on that as well. But they actually increased a little bit from the urine therapy, about 3 points. Again, that's not a big difference, but you know, that's an interesting thing. Now, my creatine kinase went down substantially, and I don't think this is necessarily from the urine. I think this is, as you can see, in July 9th, 2022, it was 929, which is massively out of range, but I was overtraining from July until June of 2023. I was, and through the end of 2023, training as a CrossFit athlete, trying to make it as a professional athlete, and just overtraining. And so this is clearly from overtraining, creatine kinase, muscle breakdown. This is just massive, 929, and then down 627, and then injuries happened, and so I had to back off training, and so you can see it continuously has gone down 404 and then down to 268. So again, I wouldn't say that is from the urine therapy. I would say that's because I've reduced training substantially to let my body heal. But then we look at like potassium, sodium, albumin, AST. You know, my AST was actually high. It kind of came down a little bit. These other nutrients were about the same. GGT was about the same. Calcium, cortisol, TSH were all about the same. And my TSH is a little bit high. I did a full thyroid panel to see, and then the thyroid panel came back healthy, so I'm not too concerned about that. So what's fascinating to me is my overall blood work, there's really nothing to point out to show that this was bad for me or that it was good for me. Everything seemed about normal. So I find that interesting, drinking a glass of urine every day for 90 days, and it really didn't seem to change my blood work that much. And so that was a blood panel from Inside Tracker. Now I did other blood panels from other laboratories to test some of those same markers just to see if other labs would show different results, and they really didn't. Again, there was really nothing significant in the other blood test reports to point out, so I'm not even going to go into those. Let's go into the urine results, because the urine results are really, really interesting. So first, let's look at the toxic metals in the urine, and this was collected on February 4th, 2024, as you can see. So it's the beginning, right before I started the 90-day protocol, and you can see all these heavy metals. I want to point out aluminum first, and then cesium and thallium. You know, most of these, nickel, you know, lead, also keep an eye on that. So lead was pretty low. Cesium was almost out of reference. Starting to get into a little bit of the yellow there, which opens up a little bit of concern. Thallium, nickel, again, aluminum. Most everything here is in the green though. But now let's go into the after results. And this is what's fascinating. Look, aluminum went up substantially. It's still within range, but it went up. Cesium went up slightly. Lead went up slightly. Mercury and nickel went up slightly. And thallium went up out of the range. So these ones actually went up. Let's put these side by side. So if we actually put them side by side like this, you could see most of the heavy metals that were already there actually went up a bit, which I ran this by a couple of functional medicine doctors. And what they told me is when they put their patients on heavy metal detoxes, so they will do a detox and they will actually work on removing the heavy metals from their body, their reports will look exactly like this. Their reports will actually show more of the heavy metals that are in their bodies currently will actually increase in the urine, meaning the body is detoxing those. Now that's very fascinating because there is a theory that is touted scientifically about urine therapy that claims when we ingest our urine, it may act as a cell signaling mechanism, meaning it may actually tell your body what it needs to eliminate from itself to keep itself healthy. Now, I don't know if there's hard science that proves that, but there are a number of doctors and scientists who have been using urine therapy with their patients actually for decades who claim this to be the case. So if that is true, then it would make sense here. It would make sense because you see most of these heavy metals increase during that time, which that theory would mean that it actually increased my body detoxing these heavy metals out of it. So the next test that's really interesting is actually the environmental pollutants. Let's look here on the left. We'll put these side by side, and you'll see most of these exposures on the left are not any, not any, not any. And then you have hipparate, which is 71%, very high. And you scroll down, most of these are not any, or you have some that are kind of in the mid-range or lower range. And so we're looking at those environmental pollutants. These are pollutants we're all kind of exposed to on a day-to-day basis in all kinds of products and home care products. By the way, when I showed these tests to some functional medicine doctors, they actually told me that these tests are some of the lowest numbers they've ever seen on environmental pollutants and heavy metal toxicity. Most people they see, their numbers are very high in most things. So clearly what I've been doing over the years has been working to keep heavy metals and pollutants out of my body. But let's look at these tests. So again, a very similar thing. Hipparate increased from 255 to 1,593. Phenol glyoxylate was about the same. It actually decreased slightly, 0.5. But mandolate and phenol glyoxylate went from 0.28 to 0.48. That nearly doubled. And phthalate, I did have some phthalates show up, 0.08. Quinolinate, 2.1, went to 3.07. Parahydroxybenzoate went from 0.42 to 0.55, went up slightly. And alpha hydroxyasbutyrate went from 3.67, went down to 3.24. So these are man-made toxins. These are toxins that the body doesn't fully understand or know what it is. And so some of them went higher, some of them went lower. So if we're using a theory that urine is a cell signaling mechanism, that would possibly not translate over to man-made toxic chemicals like these. Heavy metals come from the earth. The body knows those. It's in our food, it's in our water in small amounts naturally in nature, right? The body understands what those things are. The body doesn't understand what all these man-made chemicals are. Phthalates and these things, these are made in laboratories. So my theory would be why some of these went up and some of them went down would be that the body just doesn't understand these things and can't really cell signal to remove them from the body. So as you can see, my blood work is fascinating. Number one, there were a lot of things that really didn't change. Number two, with the heavy metals, most of those heavy metals increased, which are indicative of my body probably detoxing those heavy metals. The fact that I did urine therapy every day for 90 days and felt good, felt fine, got used to it pretty quickly, didn't turn me off any longer, and actually started to taste normal. And at one point, when I was dehydrated in the middle of the desert in Kenya, actually rejuvenated my body and tasted very sweet, shows me that what all of these doctors and scientists and people have been writing books and working with patients for decades using urine therapy to heal them of ailments may actually have some credence. So what do you think? What do you think about my blood results? What do you think about my experiment? What do you think about urine therapy? Let me know in the comments. And if you yourself have used urine therapy and you yourself know somebody who has healed something using urine therapy, share it in the comments below. I know there are many groups of people out there who are using urine therapy secretly and quiet because they're afraid of being shamed and afraid of being called a lunatic and crazy, but they're getting amazing results for themselves or the people that they're working with. And remember, cutting edge science is always ahead of where our current populace is. So what that means is when you're discovering new things, when you're discovering something different, when you're discovering something that goes against the societal norm, you're going to be considered crazy, you're going to be considered cuckoo, you're going to be considered conspiracy theorist, whatever. But very often those are the ones who end up getting Nobel Prizes 20 years later. So just because you're doing something and using something and seeing great results, but our current level of science or our current level of thinking is not caught up with that yet, doesn't mean you're crazy. In fact, if you're getting good results doing something, then I say keep doing it. And if you're getting bad results doing something, then stop doing it. What I can tell you, for me, this experiment opened my eyes in a really big way, shattered some subconscious beliefs that were indoctrinated in me by society, and gave me a new perspective about how our bodies may be able to create their own perfect medicine. And if you haven't done so already, please give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and I wish you ultimate health and happiness.